This is part 10 of my testimony. Where we left off, my dog Jane had come in from outside with her, with the ear hair jaggedly cut off, about 4 inches of her hair. For reference, she looks like this. She was a Cavalier King Charles Spaniel. My mother's maid of honor and her best friend became a breeder of these dogs, and we were very blessed over the years to have her give us her retired show dogs that weren't working anymore. So we would get these dogs, and from around the time I was 16 years old, we were getting Cavalier King Charles Spaniels. I know that's a very long name for a very small dog, but they are just the sweetest dogs. And I was really upset about what happened to Jane, and I was more upset because I couldn't explain it and had no idea how this had happened to her. I started, your imagination kind of runs riot a little bit, and I was thinking, oh, well, maybe someone came into the backyard, and they cut her ear, or maybe we have like a neighbor who doesn't like animals, but it's not like our dogs bark. They don't even bark. They were not. Cavaliers are not barkers. They're very chill dogs. They don't even really want to be outside very long. They go outside and then they come right back in. It's not like we had dogs that were barking or something. I just couldn't wrap my head around it. But I was upset, and I was very unsettled about it. But I tried not to think about it. Is basically where I was at. This story, in this part of the story takes place in the early 2000s, I guess you could say, about 24 years ago. So, and I'm still in the same house now, but things are good in my house now. But at this point, they were not good at all. So, but anyway, so my aunt, who is not my aunt, she was my mother's best friend, but we called her my aunt. She gave us another dog named Olive. So at this point, it's been about a year since the incident. Jane's had trimmed the other ear to match the short ear, and it had grown back. And I would say I probably was trying really hard to just forget about it at this point. And we got the other dog. Her name is Olive. And so it was dog washing day, and I was washing the dogs in the sink. But the first dog I washed was Olive, and I dried her ears, and I got her all pretty, and I brushed out all her hair and everything, and she was just sitting in her bed behind me. I was at the kitchen sink washing Jane. Now it was her turn, and all of a sudden I just started to hear this low growl, and I was, the water's on, and I'm washing the dog. I was like, what is that? So I was like, I went, Olive? And I heard it again, and then I heard her whimper, and then I heard her growl again. And then I tried to look behind me, I said, but I couldn't really get away from the sink because I was holding Jane in the sink, and she didn't really want to stay in the sink. If you've ever washed a dog in the kitchen sink, you know what I'm talking about. She did not want to stay in the sink, so I couldn't really just run away from the sink and go see what was going on. So I remember looking behind me, and as I was looking behind me, Olive ran into the dining room. So I quickly rinsed Jane. I wrapped her up in a towel so that she would be safe, because I just wanted to walk away from the kitchen sink for a second to go find out what was wrong. So I went into the dining room, and I called Olive, and she wouldn't come to me. She was underneath the dining room table. And I said, Olive, come here, please come here. And she came, and she came out very slowly, like she was afraid. And when she came out, I saw that you guessed it, her ear was cut. Her ear hair was cut about the same exact way that it had happened to Jane, where it was jagged, looked like it had been jaggedly cut. And it was like 4 inches of hair was missing. So I was very upset. I screamed. I remember I ran to the phone and called my mom. And of course, being my mom, she came right over, and she was pretty speechless when she heard the story, though. She was, and when she saw Olive, she knew what had happened to Jane. And then she saw Olive, and she said, "Oh my goodness, it looks just the same." And I said, "Yeah." And she looked all around the kitchen for hair. And I did that too. We both did. We looked around, all around, and we couldn't find any hair. So she said, "I really don't think that this is a ghost." Because I said, "Do you think it could be that ghost, that little boy that I saw at the end of the bed?" And, and she said, "No, I don't think so. I think this is something demonic." My mom was a really solid Christian, and she had read the Bible many, many times. She had studied the Bible. Sorry, my dog is barking. And she knew all about things that I did not know because I hadn't read it yet. But the Bible explains everything that's happening to me, but I did not know that. And she tried to tell me, but I guess at the time it was just a lot for me to take in. When something like that happens in your house, we have such a strong inclination in our culture to attribute these types of things to ghosts. And ghosts sound really romantic, like one of those old novels. Oh, you live in an old house and you have ghosts. Oh, that sounds almost quaint or nice, kind of. But when they start cutting your dog's ear hair off and moving your stuff around, and there's another part of the story that I'm about to tell you, you're not going to like that too much. You're not going to be able to attribute it to ghosts. We have certain rules in the natural world that we live in, gravity. If I put my glasses down, they're going to be here when I come back. They're not going to end up in the bread box or the refrigerator, because that's just crazy. Yeah. Your dog's ear, you let them outside, they're going to come back in with all their ears on there. They're not going to be missing, because that's crazy, right? So, okay. So my husband, we got through that drama. I managed to somehow fall asleep at night, although I was leaving the lights on constantly. My husband went away on a business trip. And the night that he went away, I was having trouble sleeping. I had the light on, of course, and I was not sleeping. I was just kind of, when you're sort of in and out of that sort of twilight sleep thing where it's like you're sleeping, but you're not really sleeping. So I heard a sound like footsteps coming up the stairs. And I bolted right up in bed, as you would too, of course. So I'm like, my heart is pounding out of my chest. And then I hear footsteps, not like coming all the way up, but then it sounded like they were right outside the door. And I look over at the door. My heart was pounding so hard. I look over at the door, and the doorknob's going jigga, 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 like in the movies. And I'm like, so I jumped out of bed to go see what it was. And it was nothing. I almost kind of wanted it to be something. Like I was like, I'm ready to fight. But seeing that there was nothing out there was even more scary. So I ran around praying over the house like my mom did. Okay, I guess we'll wait till the next installment.